You know how that goes, right?
Yes.
Jonas Bjorkman, I am just delighted to have you on the Joy of Padel. I followed your career, the many great victories you had, partnerships, doubles, singles. In your own words, how do you describe Jonas today?
Well, that's a good question. Still enjoying tennis and of course a new passion in paddle. But still doing a lot of commentating in tennis, all the Grand Slams, so I'm still involved in the game that I love. But do a lot of other things today, which is something that I really enjoy, and not traveling as much, which is also something I was looking forward to after my tennis career.
Well, you say that, but we're in Doha, Qatar, and you are training, you're the manager of the Swedish men's team. Let's go back to your arrival in paddle. I mean, I would love for you just to say the first time someone said, "Hey, Jonas, let's play this other game."
Yes, 2011 maybe in Portugal. Me and Thomas Johansson was having a tennis camp for happy amateurs who wanted to improve. So we call it Peak Tennis Academy. They lived like a pro for 4.5 days.
I'm jealous already.
And that was a lot of fun. And then we played in Cascais, and the coaches there told us we need to try paddle. And of course it wasn't that sexy at the moment because there was a concrete behind, so the old-fashioned one.
Court.
Yeah. But we had a day off in between two camps, so we went up and played 2 hours for first after lunch, and then we organized everything for the next camp, and then in the evening we felt like it was pretty fun. Let's maybe go up and play again, and then we played another 2 hours, and I think that was from that day I I always wanted to play, and then of course I was one of the 4 who started a PDL in Sweden. We had about 75 centers at one point, and then of course we went a bit crazy in Sweden, and we lost the whole company, unfortunately. But but since 2015, since we opened up, I've been playing more and more, and started to compete a little bit as well, which I enjoy.
Love it. The thing about paddle is a lot of tennis players seem to use it more like a distraction on the side. There'll be tennis centers who have a swimming pool. You go swim and relax. You play some paddle just to have a fun time. What makes paddle the fun time?
Well, I think back in the days when I played on the tour, I was trying to go out and play maybe 9, 12 holes of golf.
For your relaxation?
For relaxing, and also for get away from everything. And once you focus on a ball, you don't think so much about the loss or the win or what's coming up next. You're sort of just out there at that time, and I think it's a little bit with paddle as well. It's such a great social sport, and of course, you more you play and you get better. You can compete different type of levels as well. But it's a unique sport in that way, and I think maybe the only racket sport where you can have it a little bit more like golf, but it could be very social. You can have 2 phenomenal players, and then you can have 2 who's not that good, but we can still have fun together as friends.
Right.
Same like in golf, and you can hit that drive better than the pro, and the same in paddle. Maybe you hit one shot better than sort of a
Look
pro.
at me.
Yes, but in the end, of course, it's a big difference. But I think that's the key, because I don't think any of our other racket sports have that. And that's something that I enjoy a lot.
I suppose it does mean you have to have 2 good players, 2 of the even good players, because if you have one who's supremely different, much worse or much better, of the 4, then it's not quite as good.
No, but if I play with 3 good friends, of course I will be way better than all of them.
Right.
But still, it's nice to get together.
Right.
Sometimes it's all about, I think the tempo in life now compared to 15 years ago is, everyone's working hard. Everyone is so busy these days, and everything is hectic. So, if you are good mates, it's not easy sometimes to just get together.
Right.
But if you put in an hour paddle or an hour and a half, and then maybe have a lunch after, that is sort of a date with your friends, which is great. So I think it's something that can add on.
I love that idea. Date with your friends. My rule number 5 in paddle, which I've been living for 40 years, is after paddle, beer.
Yes.
Always socialize.
Yes.
So one of the big challenges for people who are coming into paddle, many of them come from another sport, typically tennis.
Yeah.
And tennis brings a lot, but not everything.
No.
And it feels like some tennis players really struggle to unwire. What kind of tips could you have or you give to tennis players who really want to switch into paddle?
Well, you got to take lessons. You got to listen to the people who know how to play paddle. It's like you say, in the beginning you play, can you say, tennis paddle?
Mm-hmm. Right. Tennessee paddle.
Yeah. You're scared of letting the ball go by you because you're so used to lose the point. But the more you can get used to the glass and the more you can start hitting the overheads slower, use bandejas and instead of just going full all the time, because that's of course something you have back in your head.
Right.
It's something that just comes natural. So, but with that, it's all about training. You just got to put the hours in to get used to it. And once you do that, I think volleys and things like that is about the same, but it's just a few adjustments in the technique.
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of the volleys, but there's a lot of other things which, everything above your head, it requires rethinking, because not only do you have different tempos, different strokes, different positions, and different ways of hitting the ball. So, but just putting in the hours. But what about like getting the mindset into paddle? I also think about the culture of paddle. How do you adapt into paddle? Going to Spain, playing with Spaniards feels like the only way that I know how to adapt into the culture.
Yeah, but I think that's a way. If you look to the youngsters, young promising in Sweden, you can get to a certain level in Sweden, but in the end you got to go down to Spain or Argentina, of course, but it's too far. So Spain will be the ideal, just to get used to the training and the way and the strategies and tactics they use. That is something that you just got to learn from the best.
Right. It's so hard, and so you're managing the Swedish national team, which presumably is a lot of stress and pressure, because obviously you like performing, and you have a lot of people who are interested in paddle in Sweden. How do you manage the stress, and how do you manage with the team their stress of representing Sweden?
Well, I think my experience helps me a lot, playing on the tour for 18 years, and I think maybe 14 years of Davis Cup. So it's of course different. Here you have of course some crowd as well, but it's not the same. Playing Davis Cup final with 12,000 people in Italy. It's
a million people spectating.
Yes. So of course I have such an advantage in that with my experience and knowing how it is to lose and knowing how it is to win. Once I started 4 years ago, it was mainly because the guys didn't really have a team, so they wanted me to come in because I think they respected me. They all come from tennis, but also they know that was a strength in the Swedish Davis Cup team.
Right.
We were such a good team, and sometimes we won a lot of matches with that. So for me in the beginning it was all about making sure that all the players understood, we're going to train together. Even if we got to be opponents the next day, we got to sort of help each other to become better. And then it's all about building a team as well. You got to do fun things around, so you don't see your opponents as enemies. You're going to see them and respect them as opponents, but still you can help each other. So that's been my main key. And then of course, the pressure is something that I also can add a lot of experience to. How to think out there and what to do in certain moments. I think sometimes, which is easy, like you got to play with the score sometimes. If you're up
but
if you're up a break, you maybe don't have to go for the big shots. So you don't have to be creative. You maybe could just make sure that your opponents have to play a lot. And I think sometimes, it gets to the point where my guys is getting a little tentative because they want to create too much. And instead of maybe hitting that high perfect lob like today. You know, if it's 15 all and you're up a break, maybe just hit a normal lob or just hit better margins through the middle. You know, you got to make sure that you don't give away any arm force. You know, so the other guys have a pressure, so you got to make sure that you give them a pressure.
Keep it on them.
Yeah. But if you all of a sudden give them a few unforced errors, then of course they will feel that it's possible to come or maybe turn around the match or whatever. Like today we were in such control. 4-1, 2 breaks. I mean,
in the third match,
in the third match, in the second set. And it's all about just closing that last game to 5-1, because then it's over mentally for the other guys. But then you do a few maybe strategic shots wrong, and all of a sudden you sort of give them to 4-2 and 4-3, and then the momentum is just right there. And I think that is something that is different in paddle than in tennis. In tennis I could, even if I play really bad, I could somehow play what I normally say like shitty tennis, high loops, slice. I can grind my way into a match, but it's much harder in paddle. If you play someone who's really good in the strategies, they don't allow you to sort of fight your way into the match, I think. So I think that is a big difference in it.
And why is that? Is that really the wall that makes that happen?
I think so, but I think it's just completely different strategy here. But of course, the rebounds behind you and the side, of course, is a big effect too. That it's much harder to maybe win the point against a good defense. So you got to be smart in finding the way, and I think that sometimes is of course the difference. I mean, now we cannot even talk about Argentina and Spain because they play on a different level. We all know they're going to play the final. They could have 10 teams each.
Probably,
but I mean,
by the way, they almost did with UAE.
Yes. But like, if you look to our progress for the last 4 years, you know, we've been very close to beat Brazil, Portugal, France, Italy. We've been right there, and I think the experience we're lacking a little bit. We got to just get a little bit better in those situations where we have a break point against Brazil 4-3 in the third in deciding match. You know, if Brazil gets that chance, they take it, and we don't take it really yet. So you got to be in the situation where you enjoy the moment. Doesn't matter if it's 2-2 or 5-5. You're going to play the same way. And I think that sometimes with experience you can get better.
Well, I did notice, I was watching, I think, the United States, and the coach was saying, let's just have fun. I want to talk about the fact, I mean, you won so many Grand Slams in doubles, with the fact that paddle is doubles, tennis doubles, your experience. How is it different? How do you qualify the difference of the pairing in paddle versus tennis?
Well, here is mainly more one-sided players who play on the forehand or the right side. And then you have some players who only play on the left side or backhand. I mean, in my case, I played both sides in tennis, depended who I sometimes find. And if I was of course looking for someone, maybe I think I preferred backhand towards the end, but it was all about, you know, who I teamed up with. If I had a partner for the year, of course, but all of a sudden if I had one tournament, you know, if I ended up with someone who just say I prefer backhand, I can move over. Then of course the top players can do that, but you don't see it as much. But I think the only difference from back in the days when I played is I'm so surprised how even now in tennis, but especially in paddle, that you win as a team, but you don't lose as a team. Because I feel often that a lot of players is like, we won, he lost. So like they're focusing a lot on their partner's fault that when they're losing, you know, and you can see some players even on the, you know, Premier Padel now that, you know, they play 2-3 tournaments, and if I don't play well, okay, we stop. And you got to allow yourself to get better as a team. Sometimes you connect straight away with someone, and sometimes you don't connect. I mean, I was playing once with Kafelnikov. We both were top 5 singles and doubles, and everyone said we will be unbeaten to play against. But he had a completely different personality than me, and a different strategy how to play doubles than me, that we couldn't play. So then you can understand. But most of the time, you find who's going to be the tactical man and who's going to be the positive one who's pushing the team up.
Gingotto style.
Yeah, exactly. So, sometimes I think they give up too fast when they start playing with a player, a partner.
Sancho Gutierrez, he said that it's a game of two, but it's individuals, two individuals playing the game. And I like your point. You need to learn how to win together and lose together, and own the responsibility. This idea of leadership in paddle is interesting because you can so clearly push the ball to one person and make that person in the fridge, the other person in the fridge. And
not as easy to do in tennis.
Not as easy. I think it's not as easy, exactly.
Very,
and
very
therefore,
different.
You have to be really supportive, even if they fuck up.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, if you play bad, it's not going to help if your partner show, looking
dropping
frustration.
Shoulders,
I mean, of course, you're just going to play worse.
Yeah.
But if you have a partner who just come and say, sorry, next one, vamos, whatever, of course, sooner or later you're going to feel. I played with Max Mirny, and he could hit 20 returns in the fence almost.
Right.
But he would always come, and say, sorry, beast, next one.
Yeah.
And I knew that he was going to be there.
Right.
And for me, we had different strength.
Right.
My serve was not as good as his, but my returns were much better than his.
Yeah.
So for me, it was just to focus on giving the returns in, and he can be the big man at the net. So it's like, you got to find that,
complementarity.
Exactly. So it's all about being positive together.
All right. What about, so you're on the court, and you are not playing well. Just the touch isn't there. You've hit a few easy volleys on top of the net. Maybe a return a serve out easily. What does Jonas do in those moments?
For me, it's all about energy. Try to jump around, start to move my feet a lot more. I think most of the time when I'm not playing well, I put my position in too early, so I'm not perfect at the ball. And I think it's a little bit the same in paddle, especially high lobs with the wind. It's so easy that you put you put your feet down too early,
and then
you got to be So it's all about getting the intensity up. I mean, it's often you can start. It's easy when you start great, of course, but if you don't start great, it's still a long way. So for me, it's all about intensity, energy, and getting positive, and don't think about the unforced errors.
Right, or the last point. Move on, move forward.
Yeah.
All right, I want to get back just to the last part about managing a Swedish team. Looking around here, I see how clearly there are different cultures, different ways of team building. And Sweden is a country in evolution, is the way I would describe it. How do you pull on the Swedishness to galvanize, to mobilize in a way that's more powerful than maybe other countries? Because, whether it's Peru or Chile, Paraguay, they all have their pride.
Yeah.
What do you pull on in the Swedish heritage that helps?
I think it's important, from the start, that you got to be so proud of yourself. You have one chance in your life if you have a sport to play that represent your country, and it's nothing better. I mean, to put on the yellow and blue jersey, you just got to, I think, talk a lot about the opportunity you get, and a lot of people never get. So they understand the situation, the privilege of being in the national team. So I think that is the biggest key for me to speak to everyone. Newcomers, I have 2 guys coming in here now, and for me it's all about explaining for them what it takes, and be proud in the moment. And then if you win or lose, as long as you give 100%. You know, some days it's going to be good, and some days not. And also you have someone on the other side who maybe play better. You got to accept that as well.
That's exactly right. That's part of the. Yes, I love
but no one is going to be disappointed at you
because you gave your best.
But you gave your best. But you got to feel like, you know, this is special. And I think that's, if you start in a national team now, since this is a young sport in Sweden, you know, it's so important to grow it down to the juniors, to understand the privilege of representing your country. For me, going back with all my victories, Grand Slams or singles titles, doubles titles, but if something stands out, being part and winning Davis Cup for Sweden, that was my biggest dream since I was 12.
Well, there's always, that comes with that, the pressure though as well. And one of the things I like to think, and I think it's important for most of us, you know, playing at this level, you guys are, is also representing paddle. Not just your country, but to think that what is paddle giving to you? I mean, I've talked to Danny Windall about how much paddle is given to him, and paddle can give to others. And so we need to also keep promoting paddle to the juniors, getting them excited. Yes. Not just, you have to win, but also keep them getting excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, pressure is a privilege. It's something you have to enjoy. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard.
Right.
And when it comes to being, you know, what paddle is for you, you know, it's important. I mean, everyone has a role as an ambassador.
Right.
And you know, some people don't understand that role. I think going back to tennis, I think we never had such a good ambassadors like Nadal, Federer, Djokovic. Absolutely unique. No offense to some other past former ones, if I say no names, but some have never really been, maybe more focusing on themselves, and it's nothing wrong.
Right.
But what they have done for the sport of tennis, these three, is just unique, and that's the same in paddle now. Like, you know, the best players out there, they have such a responsibility to grow the sport.
That's right.
You know, to be role models for the new generation coming up, and that goes from sort of a best in the world to each nation's best players.
Yes, exactly.
You know, you got to behave correct. I mean, of course, you can do some bad stuff sometimes. You're only human.
Yeah.
But it's important, you know, if you lose a match, if you see some kids there and they want to take a photo or sign autograph,
you gotta put in the time.
You gotta do that, and then you can go in and smash your racket in the locker room. But you gotta be the same when you win or lose. You cannot be a bad loser, you know. So everyone has a big role in that.
I love that. Thank you, Jonas. Last question for you: managing on the bench. You have basically 90 seconds in between every two games. How do you approach those 90 seconds?
Well, I always try to start with a positive. If the boys hold their serve and then lose the returning game, I always focus to say that it was a great service game. You know, I really played it well. You know, because it's always nicer to hear the positive things first, and then maybe 2-3 things strategy. But not too much. It's all about giving them positive energy. But if I can see that, you know, the opponents are better in reflexing backhands, you know, I would try to tell them, you know, to maybe look for the forehand or making sure that now with the return of serve, they started to hit up very, very high lobs. But then you cannot hit your serve short, because then it's going to be easy for them. So you're going to make sure even go maybe straight body. So there would be a few
little
things.
Adjustments.
Like so that's a main thing for me, you know, but also to be positive out there. So no, it's been fun. I've done it now for 4 years. This is my last year, but you know, I think at the time when I came in, you know, it's been a great progress. I mean, my team now compared to my first, you know, everyone was 30 plus. Now I have two teenagers, more or less 18 years old, and then a couple of them between 20 and 25. Right. So, you know, it's been fantastic to see the development in Sweden and how everyone is getting better, and that the young generation is coming up and challenging the best ones.
How many years before we see a Sweden or another beat Spain or Argentina?
Oof. Long, I think. I think any team would love to. I think Portugal is maybe the closest.
Yeah.
They have 3 really strong teams. But still, they getting beaten badly. Italy as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we were close to beat Italy in the European, set in a breakout. But so I don't know. It's probably another 10 years. It's going to take some time. I mean, like you said. I mean, started in 70s, 80s in South America, and then 80s in Spain. It's a big advantage from maybe 10 years in Sweden, and I would say probably the same in France and Italy, about 10 years. So, we are behind, but we're going to learn from the best. We got to make sure we take advantage of great coaches from Argentina and Spain.
Yeah.
That would be the fastest way to develop and get better.
It makes me think of some countries that maybe didn't get a technology, then they can leapfrog the technology and just quickly get into the digital world. However, it's just not that way.
No. And then, in a way, I think, that with the success we had in Sweden, 80s, of course, Bjorn first, but then in the 80s and the 90s. Mats, Stefan, I mean, you can name so many of them, and which was my idol as well. But, after that era, I mean, I still have requests of getting back on the tour as a coach, purely because we had so many good coaches in our program. So the standard for coaching, it's almost like everyone on the tennis tour now, they prefer to have a Swedish coach purely because of back in the days what we had.
Well, there wasn't only just success.
No.
I think it was.
There was a lot of
the
things.
impression of Bjorn Borg's mindset on the court.
Yeah.
He might be furious and raging inside, but that ability to stay calm is something that is part of the Swedish heritage. I think. I don't know if you agree.
I agree. I mean, I was different. I wanted to show more emotions on the court, but in the end, it's all about the strategy. I mean, if you run out after 5 hours, of course, the other guy is going to think that you are so fit and not tired at all. Right. So it's a mental game. I think a lot of people miss that a bit. I think you can do so much in the mental game, how to prepare yourself, but also how to get in under the skin of your opponents.
Without being ugly.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say, without being ugly. So, I think that's the next step to take advantage of.
Jonas, beautiful pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Great word. What's the last word for paddle?
Last word for paddle. Love it.
Excellent. Thank you, Jonas. Vamos.